Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a major geopolitical shift that is unfolding faster than anyone expected, and it's happening right in the heart of Northern Europe. The Baltic Sea, long considered a tense but stable region, is now becoming the center of one of the most important power struggles of our time. Russia is watching its influence shrink day by day, and Vladimir Putin can't stop what's coming next. This isn't just another regional dispute. It's the collapse of a strategic advantage that Russia has depended on for decades, and the momentum of change is now far beyond Moscow's control. For years, Russia relied on the Baltic Sea as a buffer zone, a gateway for its navy, and a corridor for projecting strength into Europe. But the landscape around the Baltic has transformed dramatically. Countries that once sat in diplomatic ambiguity have now taken hard positions. Alliances have tightened, military infrastructure has expanded, and Russia's neighbors have unified with a sense of urgency not seen since the Cold War. This shift is creating a completely new balance of power, and because of it, Russia is losing ground faster than it can recover. The first major blow to Russia came when Finland joined NATO. This single move changed nearly everything in the region. Finland shares an enormous land border with Russia, and for decades that border remained neutral. Putin assumed Finland would never abandon neutrality, but after the invasion of Ukraine, everything changed overnight. Finland now brings advanced military capabilities directly into NATO's defense network, and for Russia, that means its northern flank is no longer open. The Baltic Sea turned from a semi-neutral space into a NATO-dominated zone, and Russia had absolutely no way to stop it. Then Sweden stepped in, delivering another strategic setback for Moscow. Sweden's decision to join NATO was historic and unprecedented. This wasn't simply a political gesture. Sweden controls key territory and naval assets that help seal off the Baltic Sea. With Sweden and Finland both in NATO, the entire region has effectively become an enclosed security zone controlled by Western allies. Russia's access, mobility, and influence are shrinking dramatically. What used to be a contested zone is now increasingly looking like a NATO stronghold. Meanwhile, the Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, are reinforcing their defenses faster than ever. These nations have lived under the shadow of Russian pressure for decades, but now they are taking aggressive steps to fortify themselves. New military bases, air defense systems, rapid response units, and intelligence networks are being built with unprecedented speed. These countries are no longer waiting for threats to reach their borders. They are preparing before any crisis escalates. One of the biggest developments is the rapid deployment of NATO forces in the region. Multinational battle groups are being expanded, rotating troops are becoming permanent, and joint exercises have reached record levels. For the first time in history, NATO's presence in the Baltic Sea is overwhelming compared to Russia's limited deployment capabilities. The sea is filled with intelligence ships, patrol vessels, and advanced surveillance systems that monitor every movement leaving the Russian ports. The message is clear: NATO is here to stay, and Russia can't push back without risking a wider conflict it cannot win. Poland has also become a major player in this shift. Over the past few years, Poland has built one of the most powerful militaries in Europe. It has invested in tanks, air defense systems, and modernized equipment, preparing itself for any threat from the east. As a result, Poland is now positioned as a frontline stabilizer in the entire Baltic region. Russian planning must now account for a significantly stronger and more coordinated adversary than before. The strategic landscape Russia once depended on has melted away. Another critical factor weakening Russia's position is its economic overextension. The war in Ukraine has drained resources, manpower, and equipment at a rate few predicted. The Russian Navy is struggling with maintenance issues, outdated vessels, and constant sanctions that prevent access to key technologies. Every year, Russia loses the ability to compete technologically. Meanwhile, NATO members are operating some of the most advanced naval and air systems in the world. The gap is widening, and Russia simply can't catch up. Russia's Kaliningrad region, once considered its crown jewel in the Baltic, is now facing unprecedented isolation. Kaliningrad relied heavily on logistical routes through Lithuania and Poland. But due to rising tensions, these routes are restricted, monitored, or blocked entirely. The region is surrounded by NATO territory, limiting Russia's ability to resupply or reinforce it. Kaliningrad was once Russia's forward pressure point in Europe. Now, it is more like a trapped outpost surrounded by strength it cannot challenge. At the same time, undersea infrastructure in the Baltic Sea has become a new battleground. Pipelines, communication cables, and energy links are under tighter surveillance than ever before. After multiple sabotage incidents, NATO countries have expanded their underwater monitoring systems, making it nearly impossible for Russia to conduct covert operations. The message is unmistakable. Any attempt to interfere with European infrastructure will be detected instantly and responded to collectively. A major turning point came when Denmark tightened its control over the Danish Straits, the narrow passage that connects the Baltic Sea to the North Sea. These waters are absolutely vital for Russian naval movement. By increasing surveillance, upgrading coastal defenses, and coordinating closely with NATO, Denmark has effectively turned the Baltic Sea into a monitored zone where every vessel is tracked. Russia's ability to move ships discreetly is gone. Any deployment now risks exposure, interception, or diplomatic consequences. The Baltic Sea is also becoming a testing ground for advanced NATO technologies, drones, underwater sensors, anti-submarine systems, satellite surveillance, and real-time intelligence sharing are all being deployed. The level of coordination among NATO members has reached heights that would have been unimaginable 10 years ago. The alliance is operating like a single integrated force. Russia, in contrast, is struggling to modernize outdated assets, losing experienced officers, and dealing with shortages that weaken every aspect of its military operations. Russia's influence over its neighbors is also collapsing politically. Countries that once feared provoking Moscow now openly challenge its actions. Diplomatic pressure is increasing, sanctions remain in place, and Russia's traditional leverage energy supplies is fading fast. Europe has dramatically reduced its reliance on Russian gas and oil, removing one of Moscow's most powerful tools. As Europe's energy independence grows, Russia's ability to intimidate its neighbors evaporates. Even Russia's propaganda influence is diminishing. Baltic nations have hardened their information networks, removing Russian channels, cracking down on disinformation, and investing heavily in cybersecurity. Russia is losing the information war in the region just as quickly as it is losing strategic territory. The Baltic states are now among the most unified, resilient, and coordinated countries in the world when it comes to resisting Russian interference. Putin is facing a reality he never expected. The Baltic Sea is no longer a region where Russia can project power. It has become the opposite, a region where Russia is isolated, monitored, and strategically outmaneuvered. Decisions that once allowed Moscow to keep Europe guessing now have little effect. The momentum of change is simply too strong. NATO is expanding, its allies are strengthening, and Russia's influence is shrinking daily. What makes this even more significant is that Russia can't reverse these changes without triggering consequences it can't afford. If Moscow tries to challenge NATO in the Baltic Sea, it risks confrontation with a far superior force. If it attempts to rebuild its navy, it faces sanctions that block access to critical technology. If it tries to pressure neighboring countries, it only accelerates their efforts to fortify against it. Every move Russia makes now leads to a dead end. Meanwhile, the United States continues to reinforce the region with ships, aircraft, and large-scale exercises. American submarines quietly patrol areas near key Russian naval bases. Strategic bombers regularly fly over the Baltic as a show of force. Russia must now account for the consistent presence of American power so close to its territory. That reality alone changes everything about how Russia operates in the region. One of the most important elements shaping the future of the Baltic Sea is the emerging network of joint European defense projects. Countries like Germany, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Poland are coordinating weapons manufacturing, intelligence sharing, and defense planning. This cooperation creates a unified defense structure that Russia cannot compete with. Each country brings unique strengths, and together they form an overwhelming strategic advantage. Another major challenge for Russia is its aging infrastructure and limited shipbuilding capacity. Many of Russia's Baltic Fleet vessels are outdated, slow, and technologically inferior. Shipyards lack funds, materials, and skilled workers. Sanctions have crippled the industry, slowing production timelines dramatically. Meanwhile, NATO members are launching new frigates, submarines, and patrol vessels equipped with state-of-the-art technology. Every year that passes widens the gap even further. Russia's internal political situation is also weakening its position. Economic strain, declining morale, and growing dissatisfaction at home mean the government is under pressure. The Kremlin must prioritize domestic stability over expensive military adventures. This allows NATO to expand influence in the Baltic with virtually no pushback. Russia simply doesn't have the capacity to respond on every front. Even when Russia attempts to conduct military posturing, it often backfires. Large exercises near the Baltic only motivate NATO countries to increase their readiness. Threats against Finland or Sweden only accelerate their integration into NATO systems. Missile deployments in Kaliningrad only lead to more air defense systems being installed in Poland and the Baltics. Every attempt to intimidate the region results in stronger resistance and deeper NATO coordination. Another key development is the increasing number of NATO air patrols. Modern fighter jets from multiple countries now operate in constant rotation, covering the entire region. Russia's older aircraft struggle to match their range, sensors, and capabilities. NATO's air dominance means that any Russian movement is detected instantly. This severely limits Russia's flexibility in the region and reduces its ability to project power. Russia is also losing the economic influence it once held over ports and shipping routes in the Baltic. European ports have diversified their supply chains, reduced reliance on Russian goods, and created new trade agreements. Russia's cargo traffic through the Baltic has dropped significantly. As a result, Russia's economic presence is shrinking just as quickly as its military presence. The rise of Nordic-Baltic cooperation has been another major challenge for Russia. Countries like Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and the Baltic states are working together more closely than ever. They share intelligence, conduct joint training, and coordinate cyber defenses. This regional unity forms a stable bloc that Russia cannot divide or weaken. It marks a dramatic shift from the decades when Russia played countries against each other to maintain influence. Putin is running out of leverage. He can no longer intimidate Finland. He can no longer pressure Sweden. He can no longer divide NATO, and he can no longer dominate the Baltic Sea. Every strategic card Russia once held has been undermined by its own actions and by the unprecedented unity of the region. The Baltic is transforming into a fortress of cooperation, defense, and surveillance that Russia simply can't break. This transformation also extends to energy routes. New gas pipelines, renewable energy grids, offshore wind networks, and interlinked power systems are forming a shield of economic independence around the Baltic. Russia's old strategy of using energy as a weapon is collapsing. Countries in the region now rely on each other rather than Russian pipelines, making Moscow's threats meaningless. Even Russia's submarine presence is being challenged. Advanced NATO sonar networks, seabed sensors, and drone swarms can track movements that once went undetected. Russia's submarines face constant monitoring, reducing their ability to carry out special missions or intelligence gathering. This new level of transparency has stripped Russia of one of its most important tools in the region. What's coming next is even more defining. The Baltic region is preparing for the next stage of defense modernization. More missile defense systems are being installed. More naval vessels are being built. More surveillance networks are being expanded. More military agreements are being signed. And every one of these steps tightens the strategic noose around Russia's position. Putin can't stop what's coming because the change is no longer driven by politics alone. It is driven by national security, regional cooperation, economic independence, military modernization, and collective determination. The Baltic states and their allies understand what's at stake, and they know that allowing Russia to regain influence would put Europe at risk. They are united in ensuring that never happens again. The Baltic Sea is becoming a controlled, monitored, and fortified zone unlike anything seen before in Europe. Russia has little room to maneuver, little ability to rebuild, and little influence left to project. The days when Moscow could threaten the region with military might or political pressure are gone. A new era has begun, and Russia is on the outside looking in. As the months and years ahead unfold, the Baltic region will continue to strengthen. New technologies will be deployed, new alliances will be solidified, new defense lines will be built. Russia will find itself increasingly isolated and unable to shape outcomes. The balance of power has shifted permanently, and Putin can do nothing to reverse it. The world is watching this transformation closely. The Baltic Sea is no longer just a regional flashpoint, but a symbol of how unity, preparation, and determination can reshape global power dynamics. What's coming next is inevitable. The region has already moved beyond Russian influence, and every day that reality becomes clearer. Putin can't stop what's coming in the Baltic Sea because it has already arrived. The world has changed, the alliances have solidified, and the momentum is unstoppable. For Russia, the Baltic is no longer a gateway to Europe. It is a wall, a powerful, united, and unbreakable wall built by nations that refuse to be intimidated again. And that is the new reality shaping the future of Northern Europe.